Hey, I'm your host, the Dr. Danko, come on in. You've been missing out, so let's begin. Pumpkin_crumb is your host here too. When you hear the beat, you know what to do. Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Hey. Good evening and welcome to Why Did Not You Warn Me? I'm your host, Matthew, the Dr. Danko.
And I'm Hillary Crumb, the co-host.
That's right. So, Hillary, how are you doing today?
Good, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Well, let's try to act like we didn't spend most of the day together.
I mean, I left for a little bit.
Yeah.
Got
for a
tired
couple
of you.
hours.
No, I'm kidding.
No, you had a job interview.
I had 2 job interviews today, but you came with me for one of them.
Right, that's what I mean.
Right. Just clarifying.
Good stuff,
I'm tired.
though. I know. I mean, this is the normal time that we normally record.
I know.
Okay.
It's just been a busy couple days.
Yes, it has. Yesterday we drove to West Virginia.
And back.
And back to your storage unit.
Yeah.
Which was a whole lot of fun.
I have until the end of the month, a 5x5 storage unit because my mom sold my childhood home. No hard feelings. And we were getting ready to go to Utah. So I did like some condensing and thinning out of my personal belongings, but most of it I was able to fit into, well, everything left I was able to fit into a 5x5 storage unit. And I somehow over the course of the year forgot exactly how much shit was in there. Now we have a 2-bedroom place and we're going to be in one spot for a while. Also, it just doesn't make sense for me to have like a base in West Virginia anymore.
Right.
Since, there's nothing there. Yeah. So I figured, for the couple of months that we're here, I wouldn't pay for my storage unit. And then when we're ready to leave, I'll get another unit in Pittsburgh. But what that entailed was having to empty out the existing unit. And we left before my mom had cleaned her shit out of the house. Yeah. So there was stuff in there of my mom's, of my brother's. And, I knew that because mom has been paying half of the unit. Right. But we even took your dad's large truck to move everything.
Because we were for sure not going to get it in your car.
Yeah. And I was like, it's not that much stuff. We're going to be fine.
And I didn't remember it being that much either. Because I don't even know if we took 2 cars once to fill it. We might have made 2 trips.
Yeah, I know for sure we made 2 trips, but I just did not. And we didn't even take most, we took my mom's wedding dress, which is in a fairly large box. Yeah. And my brother and I both have these large wooden, memory, keepsake chests. Right. And we took mine and his. But other than that, the rest of it's mine. Yeah. Which is overwhelming.
Well, it is mostly books.
It is mostly books.
It's 95% books.
Yeah. The more we go through it, the more I'm like, holy fucking shit, I'm a hoarder.
You're not a hoarder. I mean, you also had bookcases,
this is a lifetime of book collecting.
Right, and you read all the time.
Right, and I've read most of these more than once. Yeah. So, and I also did, a big clean out of my books. That was something that I sat down and took the time to do before we left. So the ones that are left are ones that I actually want. Mm-hmm. Although going through them since we've gotten here, I have weeded out 5 more.
Well, as you would. You haven't seen these books at least all together in a long time. Right. We made a transfer of books when we were leaving Williamsburg. Right. Just so you could switch out the things you were reading.
Yeah, so yesterday we drove 3.5 hours to West Virginia, piled as much as we could fit in the car. Yeah. Drove 3.5 hours back to Pittsburgh, then had to unload my life from the back of the car.
It kind of just looked like we had moved.
Again. the same amount of shit that we brought in from, 6 months in Utah, 6 months in Williamsburg. Yeah. And then, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, though, a lot of what was there were, like, multiple small boxes.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Like, we did have some large Tupperware containers, some, like, half Tupperware-sized containers.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was in all these different sized boxes, which probably made it look more than it was.
It filled up the whole car. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, it's still,
Yeah, and I mean, and honestly, most of it is stuff that I still want. Because at this point, I've gone through most of it. Like, I mean, I pulled out, some 3rd grade writing assignments that I don't particularly think I'll need to look back on fondly. And there was a lot of clothing in it from when I was younger that I have no particular attachment to, that I assume, like, at some point my mom shoved it in there. But like, this crusty purple headband that I wore every day in 3rd grade, like, that's great. We don't need to hang on to that.
Well, the thing is, because now your home has been sold, there's not really a place to keep it.
Right.
It's like, it's sort of the person who it belongs to, it's sort of their responsibility to hold. Because, like, my parents' house is filled with, I mean, there's tons of, like, My Baby shit.
Right.
That they're like, this is just keepsakes of when you were a kid, and I'll never look at them.
Right.
But because there's a home base, they can keep it there without any extra thought to it. You don't have that option.
No, I don't.
You kind of have to bring what you can with you where you go.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I spoke to my grandmother about this last year when I was starting this weeding out process. And Grandma is all for, like, let it burn. The woman has no sentimentality.
Her whole thing's, didn't she say something like, well, when I'm gone, you guys, I don't want you guys to deal with it?
The mentality is, when you're dead, someone's going to have to go through your shit. Why don't you make it easy for them?
Yeah.
I'm like, I am not at that point in my life.
No.
My mother, on the other hand, has saved everything.
Yeah.
I found an empty tub of Noxzema wipes, which she must have saved because when I was 13 and started getting zits, I swear to God, it must have been the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Her flip phone.
That I understand. I still have all my flip phones. We actually have it right here. It's an LG.
Matt saved the flip phone. He also...
U.S. Cellular. Not even like Verizon or some shit.
That's what worked in West Virginia.
Yeah, no.
Also,
awesome.
Every time Matt came across a picture of me as a baby,
that's because
he pounced on them. There is a picture of my naked baby butt on top of the radiator in our bathroom, and a framed picture of me with a little baby mohawk wearing a t-shirt that says
"Teething is the pits."
Teething is the pits. And it's on our counter, so it's the first thing you see when you walk into our home.
Look, when I was growing up, my brother had a very similar photo to the one of you, like you're laying on your stomach.
It's a boudoir.
Yeah, like
baby
but
pose.
He was in what looks like a sink, like a porcelain sink. There might be a porcelain vase, and he's
so
as the baby is naked in the sink.
Free balling.
Like, free balling. But it's I mean, the whole concept, like the fact that that's a thing that parents do is just weird.
My mom told me that she and my dad went in to get those pictures taken because they had both had them done when they were babies.
It's a thing.
And no, the people at the photography studio thought that they were so weird.
Oh, okay. Well, it is a common thing, but we're
going to take our own pictures. Everybody has a high quality camera on their phone now. Like, I'm not going to take my child into a studio.
Yeah, like in a Kmart
to display them in a window.
But in the photo of my brother, it was an action shot because he's drooling.
the way your finger was going, I thought it was going to be mining.
No. He's just sitting there like, and there's this line of drool that you can see, and it's preserved. No. I'm sure we still have the photo.
That should have been blown up for his wedding.
I know.
Amazing. There isn't one of you?
No.
Second child.
Yep.
See, my brother got one. Mine, I have a stuffed animal for some reason. Also, the way my heel is positioned, it looks like it's a growth on my butt. It took me a very long time to figure out what that was.
I didn't even think of it like that.
Well,
it's just a funny photo that I'm glad we have.
In our bathroom, where everyone can see it if they sit down.
Yeah, it's important.
Anyway.
So that was yesterday.
The day before, I had 2 almost back-to-back job interviews. It was Matt's day off, so he was sleeping.
Yeah, I was pretty tired after Go Ape.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah.
So the first one was at 11 and the second one was at 1. And I am still super unfamiliar with Pittsburgh and not used to driving in, a city.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I wasn't anywhere near rush hour. Rush hour I got to do today. So I was super, super nervous and I left absurdly early.
Yeah, but it's,
Which ended up being necessary because the first one I drove around trying to find and accidentally drove up on a sidewalk that I thought was a landscape parking lot and wasn't.
Yeah, we've all done that.
Sorry to the YMCA in Bellevue.
Yeah.
I was thinking of that John Mulaney quote where he talks about how he's so bad at driving and he's like, I see you honking and I want you to know that I also don't want me to be doing what I'm doing. It was rough.
But you made it.
I did it. I did both interviews.
And you got offered both of them.
I definitely got offered one. The first one, they have called me and said they want to discuss a position.
Right. It's weird, but
it's basically an offer. I interview well for childcare jobs because I fucking know what I'm talking about.
Right, and kids love you, so.
Yeah. I always mean to not curse as much when I do this, but...
This is the Wild West of radio, baby.
Okay.
No, it just means there's no FCC or...
Wow.
Whatever I think the FCC does radio to. I don't know.
The interview that I went into this morning, that Matt was gracious enough to drive me to because he is an angel.
No.
Yeah.
I just didn't want you freaking out because you had to drive to Wexford at it wasn't rush, it was rush hour, but people were going into the city and we were kind of going out of the city.
Veering off. But the one today, I actually got to go sit in a classroom for a few minutes. And it was so nice.
That's cool.
So, I was in there for 5-10 minutes, and when I tried to walk out, there was a little girl who would not let me put her down.
Yeah.
It was super sweet. Yeah, I like kids.
Yeah, and they like you.
They seem to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been the past couple of days for me.
Yeah, no, I'm included in that. I tried to use my day off wisely because Go Ape is just... It's not wearing on me.
Oh, I've since quit Go Ape. I don't know if that was clear.
No, we definitely didn't talk about it.
Okay.
But yes.
It's your turn. I quit. I'm looking for other jobs. The end.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the zoo position, which I'm also interviewing for.
Which is awesome.
So at least we could do that together, which would be cool.
Yeah.
And that's a real kind of cushy job.
Yeah.
Sort of just sitting in the ticket booth.
Cashier in your air-conditioned ticket booth.
Right. And, you get to be at the zoo, which,
Yeah, and you get free passes for
I haven't been to the zoo in so long. We went to the Memphis?
I wanted to say Memphis yeah.
Zoo when we were on a road trip, just because we were there.
Yeah.
We were
why not?
thinking about going to Graceland and doing the Elvis thing, but it was,
so expensive.
super expensive, so let's just go to the zoo.
And it was perfect.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we needed.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, just, doing those zip lines, climbing those zip lines really tire me out. And we didn't have a very particularly busy weekend because of the weather. It was snowing for an entire day when I went on Saturday. But it's supposed to be super nice and super busy this weekend, which is great. So, yeah.
So you'll see. And they're super nice and they like you.
Oh, they're great people. It is just a tiring job. And the whole point of being in Pittsburgh, like we've said, is sort of to, spend time saving money, and they pay pretty well. It is kind of a far drive, especially if there's traffic. But, I don't want to be dead tired that I can't do any of my passion projects, like the Red Dwarf thing or
bulking
your
customizing.
Resume. Yeah. Which I don't think I talked about on this, but I'll save that for a different episode.
Okay.
But yeah, So I've just been tired. I haven't really been watching a lot because we've been just organizing and dead and just like British Bake Off. Let's go.
Like someday we'll come back to life and be able to do this properly, interestingly, but we're just gonna ramble. And
before we continue, the one thing I do want to apologize for to anybody who's listening is the sort of erratic quality of our show. I've listened to a few episodes. They don't sound bad. It's just because we've been moving from space to space. And now, like, we're in this room right now, the spare bedroom. I'm getting the sound off of that, unlike I did with my laptop, so I might have to go back to doing that. Last week episode, I was a bit far from the mic. I didn't have it turned up, and I didn't really edit it. So I was kind of low, whereas you were perfect volume.
Well, that's just because I'm perfect.
And I closed the windows because I don't want any outside noise, but it is hot in here.
It's stuffy.
So we might have to open the door, which you can do.
I'm going to do that real quick.
Yeah, we don't have, like, central air, and...
we have one window unit in our living room that I don't want to be pumping hard enough to
especially
cool down
because we're, paying for electricity by the
opening the door
kilowatt.
Was super helpful.
Yeah,
I can already feel
because
it.
all the windows are open out there. So if you get any background noise, I'm going to do my best to edit it out. I'm just trying to find like a very cookie cutter way of doing this every week so that it's kind of like we just sit down, do the show, and then we leave. So I'm not spending so much time working on it, because that's like a lot of people put a lot of work into their podcasts. Like the guys talking about shit, they have a whole video feed and wonderful setup. I absolutely love it. I can't stress that enough. But when I was starting the podcast with the TheDoctorDanko podcast, don't call it that.
Sorry, I missed it.
It's okay. Kevin Smith was always just like, all you have to do is like use your phone and just hit record. That's it. That's like the easiest homework you'll ever have. And you have a year to do it, so just go out and do it. And like that inspiration was like, fuck yeah, I can
Kevin
do this.
Smith told me to. Yeah. I have to drop what I'm goddamn doing.
Basically.
It's time to podcast.
But it was just like the whole sense, like how he became a filmmaker. It's just like anybody can do it. If he can do it, anybody can do it. And like podcasting was sort of the same way. And I didn't want to put a lot of time and work into it, or else I might lose the motivation and stuff to do it.
Right, and the part of this that you enjoy is the sitting down and talking, not like the production work.
Exactly. And like, I mean, like I've said in the past, I did go to school and studied sound. No.
He's a sound guy.
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's just what they put me in. So like, I do know a little bit about sound and whatnot, and it is cool to sometimes sit at a computer and start editing stuff. But podcasting is not really what I want to do that with. I've talked, probably not on this show, but on the other shows, about doing radio plays, which is a lot of like creating your own soundscapes and shit like that, which is really fun to sit down and do for hours. I just haven't had a recording space or anything to do that in, so it might happen. But with all the other projects I have going on, I might put that on the back burner again. But that would be more of my... Like, if I wanted to edit production-wise and sit down and do this, is supposed to be leisure and fun, and I just kind of want to talk to whoever I have on. Since we have a show. Like, yeah, I didn't expect to have a co-host, like a permanent co-host that,
you kept whining about wanting a podcast.
Yeah,
and I'm like, listen, the only way that it's going to get done...
Well, it was either that or resurrect the TheDoctorDanko podcast after ending it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But, like, I always wanted a co-host. Because it's way easier to banter and to get, like, work out
It is hard
thoughts.
to banter with yourself.
Right. Instead, those are just hour and a half to 2 hour long episodes of me just talking, which is fine. If
you have been known to do.
I can do it.
To the right person.
Yeah, like, I'm not great in a crowd. I have a lot of thoughts. I just sort of sit back and listen, but, like, get me in front of a mic and I'll just keep talking.
Yikes. I'm kidding.
So yeah, that's all I
get a little
say.
Mike's Hard Lemonade in you and
True.
Get your whole goddamn life story.
Yes. That
Whether or not you're ready for it.
Nobody's ready for it.
Never. It's just...
Yes, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So what are we talking about this week?
Oh, fuck. What did you watch? I mean, I can talk about a book, but I was going to let you go first.
No, because I just did that whole thing. Why don't you talk about what you read this week?
Thank you.
Why did not you read that?
I did read it.
That's the segment for our viewers, listeners. Why did not you read that? Ding.
I don't want to play anymore.
Anyway.
Sound effects. So I told you that I think I told you that I was gonna have finished Isla by this week. I'm reading the 3-book series that as far as I know, does not have a title, by Stephanie Perkins, with Anna and the French Kiss, Lola and the Boy Next Door, and Isla and the Happily Ever After. And they're stupid titles.
The Girls and Boys Trilogy.
Isla's title is okay. But I did not finish Isla. However, I have
Why did not you read that?
Okay. I have read the book like 14,000 times,
right.
So I still feel qualified to talk about it as though I have recently finished it. So Isla is sort of the conclusion to this informal series, which means that we sort of get like where are they nows from the characters in the previous 2 books, which is kind of cool. Get little check-ins to just see how their stories tie up. The boy that she meets is one of the characters from the first book. His name is Josh. Super creative. And the difference with these 2 is that in Anna and Lola, and I talked to you about this a little bit, both of those girls, they sort of had to go through their bad relationships first. So they have, this shitty boyfriend that they think is the be-all, end-all, or even just a boy that they're kind of interested in Anna's case. And then there's this amazing, wonderful male friend that enters their life who's, just their best friend in the entire world, and they can tell them anything, and just feel this special bond. But I'm gonna go back to this loser who my parents hate, and in Lola's case is, 6 years older than her.
Yeah, he's 22.
Yeah, and... Okay, so 5 years older, because Lola is 17. And he's a dick. I read aloud some of his stuff to you.
No, I do not like him.
No, he's not great. But we get to Isla, and by the time she and Josh start talking, which is very early in the book, they have both been through their bad shit already. So we reach them at a point where they are theoretically ready for each other. And they're both so shy and so quiet. But they stumble into each other in this sort of random happenstance where Isla has just had her wisdom teeth taken out and she is on painkillers. So she is very chatty and very happy and very flirty because she has been in love with Josh for years. And Josh, noticing that Isla probably kind of likes him, gives him the confidence to start talking to her, and their relationship jumps off from there. I think I've said before that Isla is my favorite of the 3 books.
Yeah.
Because I identify real hard with Isla. And I actually talked to you about this book within the first couple of months of our relationship, and I don't know, I doubt you remember.
No, I do sort of remember.
Because what happens is that, there's a series of, unfortunate circumstances in the middle.
Yeah.
But Isla sort of convinces herself that the relationship that she has with Josh is sort of too good to be true, that he's just, kind of using her to kill time, and that, he doesn't really like her, and that she's sort of doing them both and ultimately herself a favor by ending things early before she can get herself too much more invested and get more hurt.
Yeah.
Which, not to be super dramatic, but towards the early part of our relationship, that was very much going through my mind. Because you are my first serious relationship, and my thought was, well, this has never worked in the past, so I should probably just cut and run before, I get too attached and this gets...
Makes sense.
This gets too out of hand.
I get it.
Yeah. So they break up, and part of the book is sort of spent with Isla realizing these things about herself. Mm-hmm. And they come back to each other having done like all of this self-reflection, and it's very nice. The other really cool thing about Isla is that she's super shy. She's an introvert.
Yeah.
I read this particular book aloud to my mother, and it was an exercise in understanding introverts for her because she is an extrovert.
Yeah.
And she would be like, why don't these people just talk to each other? Like, why don't you just say what you mean? Why don't they just... I'm like, because they can't.
That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, so Isla and the Happily Ever After by Stephanie Perkins is just an absolutely wonderful book. And the other cool thing about these 3 books is that they all stand alone, so you don't really have to read them in order. Well, I mean, at the end of Isla, I guess Anna and the French Kiss would get a little bit spoiled because Anna and St. Clair do get engaged.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah. And Lola and Cricket, the boy from her book, show up in Paris together. So that gets spoiled. So, don't read Isla first.
Right.
But, yeah.
Or listen to this podcast.
Right. Sorry. Spoiled all of it. Ruined it. Don't read it.
No.
But, I mean, you sort of know from the beginning.
Right. Like, I mean, you should not be expecting a shitty ending.
Right. These are young adult novels.
Right.
And one of the critiques on the back is very sexy. You should date this book. So it's going to be a love story.
Of course. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. It's just, and unlike a lot of young adult love stories, it feels very real.
Okay.
It's very tender. It's very sweet. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've been reading. What have you been watching?
Well, like I said, I haven't really watched much.
What were you watching when I walked in from the interview?
Right. So in any of my downtime, I've sort of just been scrolling through Netflix looking for anything.
As one does.
Right. But I always like, if I see something that interests me, or has an actor in it I just save it to my list. And like, one day I'll come back to this, and it might not be for many months, but eventually I'll end up watching it. And first, I watched a stand-up special. It was, the comedian was James Acaster. I don't know how to pronounce it. Called Repertoire. And it's like, I thought it was one special, but it's listed as a series and there are 4 episodes. I only watched the first one. But it's just this up-and-coming, like, British comedian who's very British, like not only in how he tells jokes, but just his very thick British accent.
Nice.
Which I loved like almost immediately. That, and when he's on stage, he feels a lot like Hugh Laurie. I made this a Facebook status, but he's a lot like Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry.
We're not friends on Facebook.
No, we don't even like each other.
Just kidding.
But he has the sort of energy that those two had, and kind of does, like with any duo, one guy usually is the straight man, one guy is, the gay man jokes. Right. So he plays both. No.
Dope.
No, but with Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, they kind of could stand... I mean, they have stood on their own and done their own things, but they were always better together in some cases.
Always in some cases.
I don't think House would have been great if Stephen Fry was his, like, Wilson, if you will.
Oh, that would have been weird.
Yeah, but that's a different...
They would have, like, actually dated. It wouldn't have just been subtext.
Right.
We wouldn't have just all known, but never said anything.
Right. A table is a table, but you two want to bone. No, so he has that sort of energy, and it's kind of weird because he starts the bit like on his knees.
Sure.
Right.
Where else are you going to start?
No, but then he tells a story about this show that like was written for this allotted amount of time, like it had to be 18 minutes. But they ended up going over that time. And what they didn't realize is it was this ice skating show or something. And what they didn't realize is technically their time started the minute their blades hit the ice.
Okay.
So when they figured that out, they had everybody do like the first few minutes of the show like off the ice, standing, like to avoid doing that.
Nice.
Or they had them like kneel down before like their blades would touch the ice. So he was like starting his comedy while he's kneeling.
Gotcha.
And would like poke fun at the audience. And then when he's like, and you know, when I stand up, none of that will have counted. Like, this is where my show starts. So if you guys didn't like it, that's fine. It didn't start. It doesn't matter. And then he stands up like, and like starts his stopwatch like it was the bit starting. And then he does this whole other bit about like, you know, when you're a kid, adults always asking you what you want to be when you grow up. And he always wanted to be an undercover cop. But then he was thinking like, you know, when he finally does go through all that training, first day on the job, he's already blown his cover because he's been running his mouth around town when he was 6 years old saying he wanted to be an undercover cop. So anytime somebody would ask him that, he would say, I want to be a drug dealer to anyone. So that when the time came and he was infiltrating a drug ring and then somebody's like, somebody snitched on us. Somebody's the rat. It's like, how about James? I think he's the rat. It's like, no, this is his lifelong dream to be a drug dealer. You ask him when he's 6 years old what he wanted to be, he would say drug dealer. It's like, he's not the rat. It's just a very ingenious. And again, I've only watched the first episode, so I don't know if the rest of it's any good. But he got me watching for the first hour, so
there you go.
That's worth watching. And then the other one I watched was Patton Oswalt's new stand-up, Annihilation.
I love Patton Oswalt.
Yeah, he's such a gem. And like, I mean, you follow him on Twitter.
I do. I heard that his wife has died, and he worked very hard to get her latest true crime novel published after her death. Yeah. And it finally came out. And apparently it's really good, but that would scare the bejesus out of me, so.
Right. No, for sure.
Right. But yeah.
So yeah, I was just like, you know, I like Patton Oswalt's stand-up. I've seen a lot of it. I want to laugh. It's a great guy to laugh with, not at. And so he's doing his whole stand-up bit and like talking about, you know, Trump and all this stuff. It's very current. And then like halfway through the special, he's like, you know, I've been putting this off for a while. It's the hardest part of my special to get to, but we're gonna do it. And then he starts talking about how his wife passes away, and it just gets so real and emotional. And he's like, you know, the day my wife passed away, it was the second worst day of my life, and the first worst day of my life was having to tell my daughter that. And I don't know how old his daughter is. I'd imagine
I think she was in
elementary school. Yeah,
because he talked about the first day of first grade. I got back like halfway through this. So I got the sad part.
Right, like I was having fun, and then all of a sudden it hits you. But like he still tells jokes throughout it.
Right, like it's still
like because it's a part of his life, and like he's still dealing with it. Like it's very fresh. So he can't just not talk about it. And it's, I think when comedians do that, not only is it like, you know, I gotta be honest with my audience and like, you know, show them the real me, not in a cheesy way, but like just, you know, I get up on stage and I can put on a fake persona, but then they go on Twitter and just can read my whole life story. So why not put that on Front Street? So it also
Front Street.
Yeah, that's what it.
Put that on Front Street, shorty.
It's a very common expression.
Yes, dear.
Kevin Smith says it all the time.
Well, if Kevin Smith says it.
It's just, I pick up things that he says. Anyway.
Yes, dear.
That's my train of thought. It makes it easier. Like, he's not technically avoiding questions, but people won't have to ask if
he can control it.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was helpful. What you said before was not.
I just won't talk anymore.
This is our podcast. So yeah, you get halfway through it and it's just so real, and he's still like, still doing his thing, and I just, he's such a great guy. Very, very funny and very knowledgeable. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
And also just like super casual, mentioning like reading grief books and going to grief groups. Like, it's super cool when particularly men are so casual about that because, because of toxic masculinity, there's such a stigma against men seeking help for emotional problems.
Yeah.
For sure. That was super cool.
Yeah. It's a very good stand-up special, so I suggest you watch that.
You might cry.
You will cry.
Nat cried. I don't know. I wasn't there.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I cry at everything, so.
Right. We both got a little emotional at the season 3 finale of the Great British Baking Show.
Yeah, which is weird because I was not invested in this season.
But listen, Mary Berry was crying.
Yeah, like...
With one of the mean judges. The less mean of the judges.
Right. Paul
Hollywood, who Mel and Sue, the presenters, clearly can't stand.
Yeah, it's hard when you're watching it. It's hard to tell if that's just like the show, like that's how their dynamic is sort of written to be
banter,
right? But it's sort of like we've been doing this for so long, and I hate you.
It's getting a little bit more pointed.
Yeah,
like they made some crack about like them going off skydiving, and they're like, Mary, we've set out a harness for you. Paul, we haven't bothered.
It's more of just a one-way trip. It's fine. Yeah, like...
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Because we hate Paul, too. He's a dick.
Yeah, he is a dick. The problem is he's like the Simon Cowell equivalent of a baking show.
Cowell-equivalent.
He's supposed to be like...
Cowell-equivalent.
Great.
Go ahead.
That was better.
Thank you.
He obviously he knows his shit, but...
But, like, it's not necessary to poke a pastry that many times. Like, it's just rude.
Right.
If someone hands you a biscuit, an iced bun, okay, you're a judge, so you have to cut into the middle of it to see, the proper part of the bake. But if you can already tell that it's doughy, you don't have to keep poking it.
He does it quite a bit. And, it's so dry.
And, I could take all the layers off. And then he proceeds to take off, 5 of them. And I'm like, surely that was not necessary.
Right. It's very,
Nadia's gonna go cry.
Yeah.
The contestants, they get emotional.
Yeah. As do the viewers.
I don't have a lot of tolerance for it most of the time, but the finale was pretty sweet.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so watch that show.
Yeah.
Obviously, always.
Eventually we'll get back to Doctor Who and Buffy.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
We will, I told you.
I know. I have my computer out there, and now that we have the television off of the ground, we should be able to set it up and start doing it regularly.
But we've started watching Santa Clarita Diet again.
Yeah, which is just delightful.
Right, that's also going to be quick, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's only 20 episodes.
Right. The one thing that I did write down that we were actually planning on discussing if we can possibly duplicate this very intelligent conversation that we had a couple of days ago. We were talking about Michael Schur and the sort of impact that he has had on particularly modern humor.
We were talking about television in general.
Right, because we've said this before, I did not grow up with a lot of television, which sort of my mother was very anti-TV. We had very controlled TV time, what we could watch, when we could watch it. And I almost feel like growing up, I missed a huge part of, I'm gonna use that word again that you laughed at me for using, because it's so pretentious. I missed out on a large part of the zeitgeist.
Oh, yeah. It's what word are you talking about?
Because there are references.
I know 50 words.
Right. Things that get mentioned offhand in reference to a show that everybody grew up watching that I just don't get.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm a reader. I've always been a reader. I think that I probably would have been a reader even if my mom hadn't been such a stickler about it.
Yeah, but it's hard to say.
Yeah, so we were talking about that, just the nature of TV as it has progressed.
Right, because I've grown up with television. I was sat down in front of the television, and that was kind of my babysitter to some degree. Not in a mean or malicious way. It's just it's something to hold my attention span.
And a lot of kids need that.
Right. And I mean, I wasn't a particularly like hyperactive kid. I was pretty much always like mellow. It was more so when my brother was involved that like we got more like
off track.
Yeah.
To put it kindly.
You know, there's that game where you're like keep the balloon off the ground. Yes. But we would do that on the second floor and like still kneeling down, so like to make it fair. But all you hear is like people pounding on the floor upstairs, and it sounds like we're gonna come crashing through the dining room.
So sit them down in front of the
television. So we'd always get yelled at for that. But yeah, sitting down in front of the television was sort of like the thing I did. And like as a kid, I can vividly remember times in like the summer or like after school, knowing what time it was based on what show was going to come on next. Yeah. And I would have like the shows I watched in the order up to bedtime, and like it's crazy. But like, yeah, so there were the shows that we grew up watching with like laugh tracks. Yeah. That was like a common thing that was done in a lot of like sitcoms, especially like. Right.
And so like when people like, I watched Friends for the first time when I moved out of my mom's house. Like I was living with a couple of my friends, and we didn't have cable, but my friend Mallory had all of the seasons of Friends on DVD. Yeah. So I watched them for the first time as an adult, whereas a lot of people have stuff from that era more of like a nostalgia thing. So they view it, you know, with a more gentle tolerance. And I wasn't quite as intense of a feminist as I am now, but you know, I loved Friends. I still do, but there are parts of it that are just cringy.
Yeah, it's sort of that reflection of the time and like what people thought was.
And also, I mean, the laugh track telling you what's funny and when it's funny.
Honestly, it is very influential on what you find funny, because especially if you're watching it alone, like it sort of feels like you're with a bunch of people, even though they're not in the room with you. So like you're more prone to laugh at certain things. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird.
It's like it's a conditioning almost. Yeah. I mean, that sounds sinister, but I mean,
it sort of is though. Like, you know, when you hear a certain like tone or how a lead up to a joke where like two other people say something, and then you know the next beat is somebody's gonna say the funny thing that
so you're like
everyone laughs. Yeah. Yeah. Like it is sort of a conditioning thing, but we've sort of seen the shift out of the laugh track.
And we were saying that the shift, like, it kind of really kicked off with The Office.
Yeah, like, The Office, I mean, not only was The Office, you know, based on the British version of The Office. Right. Like, the British version, I want to say, had 2 seasons, maybe 3. But, you know, trying to just stick with American television because we could go everywhere. It changed a lot of things because it was, I would say it's a workplace comedy. It is sort of sitcom-ish, but not filmed like a sitcom. So sitcoms normally just one room with 3 cameras. Okay. Here. Oh, this doesn't work for our listeners.
It's not a visual format, then.
Left, center, right.
Gotcha.
So that you can get all the reactions in the room and kind of just stick with the, you know, I can see the entire living room. Like,
right, so everyone knows where they are.
So then you can see people enter and exit and things like that. But with The Office, you know, it's a handheld camera most of the time. The camera is a presence because people are looking to the camera, and there's scenes where they're talking directly to the camera. Like, it's sort of a new version of what a sitcom was. And I mean, The Office came in 2005, so I'm sure there were other shows before it. I mean, I don't have a list of shows off the top of my head, but...
Your heads?
Yeah, off the top of my head. But, like, I do want to say that was when television was sort of starting to change more. Because we were well out of the 90s. And the formula for 90s television was only going to work for a few more years after that. Right. Like Buffy goes till 2006. Maybe. There's 7 seasons. Yeah. So 2004.
Okay. But it's so 90s.
It's
like, all the way through. Yeah.
Because I've seen some of the later stuff.
Right. And I mean, like, yeah, the thing about Joss Whedon is that even
he has
Dollhouse is pretty 90s.
90s. But that's also a different kind of show.
Right.
I'm just trying to think of other examples, but it's because Michael Schur and all the people that worked on The Office had this new formula to work with.
Yeah, I mean, and so whether they were, sort of joining a movement that was already happening or spearheading it, they're the name that people think of.
And they were trying to figure out what the rules for that sort of show would be, like telling that kind of situational comedy with that style of filmmaking.
Right.
So you can sort of let the audience in more, whereas like when you add the laugh track, yes, it makes it feel like you're sitting in a room full of people, even though there are none there.
But you're sitting in the audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas you become another person that's working in the office. Yeah, exactly.
To put it in terms I understand.
Exactly, because they're looking at you like they're like really thinking the same things you're thinking, because presumably they, like, other than Michael Scott, you represent everyone else in the office. Like,
Did you almost say Michael Scofield?
No.
Because that's what I thought you were in the middle of saying.
No. I know the difference. Trust me. Okay. But so you have Michael Scott, who is just absolutely crazy, but doesn't realize he's crazy. And then everyone in the office that sees that he's crazy. So when he says something weird, or even Dwight says something weird, Jim looks at the camera, and you're like somebody to agree with.
That, like, look at the camera thing has become so iconic.
Yeah, it's a very iconic thing.
I mean, on Tumblr, there will be posts, and then at the bottom, just looks at the camera like I'm on The Office.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they had 9 seasons. And, like, halfway through that, Parks and Rec becomes a thing.
And Parks and Rec is the next step in the Schurniverse.
Schurniverse.
And we talked so in depth about this because, like, so in The Office you have the camera as very much a presence, very much not a character, but
I mean, eventually, like, it wasn't explicitly said in the beginning because they were still trying to figure everything out.
Right.
I remember one episode in season 4 where Jim and Pam have been they've been together, but she's up in New York. And Jim is still at the office. Like, she's doing an art degree.
Okay.
And they get to, he goes up to visit her. And they do this thing where, like, they enter her dorm room. And they're like, the camera guy's still here. But they want to, like, fool around.
Right.
So they're like, have I shown you this? Her art is right out in the hallway, and then he turns around and they shut the door, and the cameraman and then sighs, like he's looking around, and you finally get a sense that somebody is behind the camera, even though they've been interacting with it for 4 seasons.
And in The Office, they address the camera.
Yeah, later,
like the issue of the camera.
Yeah, in the few seasons that follow, they establish that this is a documentary crew, and that there's going to this is all going to air on television at some point. Which brings up a
whole other can of worms.
Yeah, just based on, like, the timing of everything. Because they condensed the 9 seasons into 1 year, like, aired it in 1 year, and then they do, like, a follow-up Q&A panel for, like, their final episode. So it's like, how did they do that? I'm sorry.
Not the issue we're addressing.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
I would like some answers.
Okay,
anyway.
so we have The Office, where the camera is very much a presence. Then the next step is Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Where, in the first episode, Leslie Knope is sort of describing to the camera the inner workings of her local government and the Parks Department.
Yeah.
And that's all the explanation, subtextual explanation that we ever get, and we never even question it because that show is pure motherfucking gold, with one notable exception.
Right.
Aziz Ansari is a blemish on that whole thing for me right now. But not important, because the show is perfect. And the next step in this Michael Schur-based evolution of television. Yeah. Because, like, and we've talked about this a couple of times in reference to Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Like, because they're both shows that we just love. Mm-hmm. And, talking about whether we'd recommend them to our parents or to people of that generation, because it's such a different style of humor.
Right.
It's
a lot of it's quick.
It's understated.
And,
it's quick.
It's subtle. And it's, again, because growing up in the environment where television that was supposed to make you laugh told you when to laugh.
It was pointed at.
It was pointed at.
This is funny.
Where, like, in our generation of television, if you don't hear the joke or, like, you look away for a second, it's over. Like,
and they don't reference it again, usually.
Well, it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
Sometimes it's a visual gag, or sometimes they make a reference to it later. But, yeah, it's so quick that if you weren't in it for that second, you missed it entirely.
But because the setups aren't necessarily as elaborate, there are more of them. Like, they're quicker. So if you missed one, there will be more. And, like, I mean, with Parks and Rec especially, it's so kind. Like, it's very good-hearted humor.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a different style.
Yeah. So, they go through 7 seasons with Parks and Rec. Never, like, address that this is a documentary crew or anything like that. They don't even reference the fact that they're wearing, like, lapel mics.
Right.
Because in The Office, there's scenes where they're, like, trying to turn it down and they turn it all the way up and stuff like that. So, like, it's, like, one step further away from acknowledging the cameraman.
Right.
And then you have Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is the next one.
Yeah.
Where the camera is a presence, but nobody talks to it.
Right, and I wouldn't even have noticed the camera as a presence if you hadn't pointed it out to me. Like, it's significantly more subtle.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just almost about, like, angles and just treatments.
Angles, they do some of the same things with the zooming in effect.
That's
Whereas,
true.
like, on The Office, they zoom in on somebody to get that reaction shot where they were looking at the camera, or, like, a realization if Michael said something weird and then they zoom in on him where he's, like, something out, like he realizes something. So in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, the camera, it's sort of, I told you this, that it sort of, to me, felt like an homage in some ways to Cops.
Right.
Because on that show, you literally have a cameraman, like, that we all are aware of.
Right.
And he's sort of following the action. That's the one thing that Brooklyn Nine-Nine doesn't have, is, like, if a chase scene ensues,
there's not, like, the bumpy.
It's shot like a regular television show, like a cop show. But all the other scenes are generally handheld. And on Cops, the whole thing is handheld.
Okay.
But since this is a cop show that takes place in a precinct, and we're still going on these cases with all these detectives, like, it's still one step. It's the same sort of comedy and style of Parks and Rec and The Office, but another step away from that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of shifting. At least Michael Schur, he's the creator and co-creator on some of this stuff. But it seems like an evolution of the style that he wants to get to.
Because it's even like, I mean, even like when we get to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's just stepping farther and farther away from spoon-feeding you the humor.
Yeah.
Because even with The Office, like, staring at the camera, it's not a laugh track, but it's you should laugh at
like
that.
The next step from a laugh track.
It's weaning us off of the laugh track.
That's kind of what it is.
That's so cool.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So because then after Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you get the
Good Place, where the camera is just not a presence
at all. And there's sort of this also evolution of I this might be a leap, but, like, so you have The Office, which is the boring 9-to-5 job. You have Parks and Rec, which is a government job.
Right.
And you have Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a cop, like, that one step above.
Then in The Good Place, they're all dead.
Heaven and hell they're dealing with. Like,
stakes
it's
are higher.
Literally the whole span of
Yeah.
what we deal with from the point of, like, entering the workforce.
Right. And also, like, I have recommended Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine to my mom.
Yeah.
Like, she has casually watched them, but I wouldn't even want to bring up The Good Place, because I think that she would watch an episode and be like, I don't understand why you think it's funny.
Yeah.
I think it's boring. And I'd be like, well, I don't know how to help you. Michael Schur will feed me his... Nope, I don't want to finish that sentence.
beat you. What was going to be the end of that sentence?
You know what? I don't even know. It's been a long day.
That's fine. But yeah, so The Good Place, it's sort of like the cameraman isn't a presence anymore, so it's just focusing on the characters and the humor itself.
Right. Which is even quicker and more subtle and layered.
So, like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would, if I didn't watch anything else, if I would be as hooked to The Good Place. Right. Because I sort of have seen that evolution happen, and
subconsciously, like, it's not ever force-fed.
No.
I don't know why I keep going back to feeding. We've been watching Santa Clarita. I hate you.
It's alright. We're going through everything from tits to teeth.
From tits to teeth. Yeah. But
so I'm very curious what his next thing is.
Yeah, I know.
Also, Michael Schur has been on The Office.
Oh.
Like, as a character.
I did not watch all of The Office.
I don't know if you ever remember Dwight's cousin, Mose. He kind of looks like a goat, but with human legs. Like, he has this long beard and, like, weird haircut. Like, if I pull up a picture of him, you'd recognize him, maybe.
I also follow Michael Schur on Twitter. His handle is Ken Tremendous.
Right.
And he is viciously anti-Trump, and it's hysterical.
Yeah.
Also, like, not surprising, given the content of all of his shows.
That's the other thing about his shows is, like, as they've gotten smarter in how they're delivering the comedy,
they are not pulling back with the social justice stuff.
No.
Like, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but they did, like, a racial profiling episode.
Yeah.
One of the black cops was on out Brooklyn of uniform. Nine-Nine. On Brooklyn Nine-Nine, sorry.
This happened on an episode of The Office.
Happened in my life. No. Who's played by Terry Crews.
Yeah.
He was out of uniform, just out, like, looking for his, like, one of his daughters dropped her blanket.
Yeah.
So he was out looking for it, and a uniformed cop who didn't know him stopped him and, like, searched him. Was like, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" And, like,
I was like, "I live here, just looking for my daughter's toy."
Yeah, and it got so real, and, like, the daughters. I mean, watch the episode. It's called.
We've done the episode.
I know, it's called Moo Moo. It's heart-wrenching, heartwarming. Watch it; it's beautiful. Yeah, and then one of the detectives came out as bi, and, like, whatever, it's great.
And even in some of the just not those episodes that are specific to, you know, certain
there's a lot of just incidental humor,
climate type stuff. Yeah, there's incidental humor, like I can't think of anything.
Like, how anti-Semitic is he?
Average.
Perfect.
Yeah. Or like snitches don't have a good time in prison. It's like, let's be real. It's not
great for trans people either.
Yeah, I know. They have a hard time.
Yeah, it's
so
just
sad.
Like, what?
Yeah, it's just like subtle, like, again, things that if you weren't paying attention to that moment that you'd miss. But like,
are you playing the gay card right now? Yes, queen.
Right.
Yeah, like, it's been said, well, I've seen it posted on Tumblr, like, that the humor that's about gay people, it's not at the expense of gay people. It's it's almost for gay people.
Yeah.
Like, when their captain is a gay black man, when he was marrying his husband, they did, like, a flashback of they did the ceremony so fast because they didn't know when they were going to lose the right to marriage. So it's like, I do, yes, we're married, done.
Yeah. Oh, Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
We got distracted. We got on a little tangent there. I got on a little tangent.
It's fine.
Let's be real.
It's fine that it's not always me doing that.
Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, Michael Schur is brilliant and shaping the way we think and appreciate humor.
Right. It's comedy for the newer generation, like a smarter brand of comedy instead of, like, you know, I love Friends too, and I watched a lot of Friends very much in syndication.
Yeah.
But a lot of the humor is, like, you know,
it's dated.
Did you scream like a little girl and stuff like that? Like, stuff that I've heard so much that regardless of, you know, how incorrect that is, like, why the fuck does it matter?
Right.
It's just dumb, boring humor. Like,
Yeah,
we're
it's
past that
not
point.
funny anymore.
Right, like I've heard that same joke in so many other shows. Like, it gets the message across, but like beating a dead horse. Like,
yeah, get new material.
That's the thing, and with shows like The Good Place and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there are some like similarities to other shows and some similar humor, but not like, it's on a different level.
Yeah, and I mean, it's sort of like,
as they said in Community, streets ahead.
It's a gentle breaking down of that conditioning. Because now we're sort of left, like we were saying, to find the jokes ourselves and laugh at what we think is funny rather than what is, what has the neon arrow pointing at it.
Right. Now that we're talking about this, I would like to know, I think you've said you've watched a few episodes of Community.
Like 1 or 2.
Yeah. You weren't hooked.
No. But I wasn't hooked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine until we started watching it together.
True.
So.
Neither was I, because it was at the time, like, they didn't really...
Yeah, it was like season 1.
Yeah, it was kind of like a Monster of the Week type show where they weren't overarching stories, and the show doesn't necessarily need that, but I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, it's better for it.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing by season 3, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kept seeing it on Tumblr, so, like, we weren't dating yet. I texted you, who had watched all of the television, asking if you had watched the show and if it was worth it. And you were like, I don't know, but I like Andy Samberg.
I love Andy Samberg, all of the Lonely Island shit and
right,
everything.
Thankfully, it doesn't get quite that, excessive.
Not excessive, like, okay. So
creative.
The Lonely Island shit is, like, smart, dopey rapping. Like,
it is, but it's also extremely crude.
Yeah, but so is a lot of rap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's not clever. It's just not my thing.
Of course not. I'm not expecting it to be. It's just like I don't know. It's just like a funny... I mean, the one that, like, set them off was Lazy Sunday. Like, on that SNL digital
I thought it was
short.
Dick in a Box.
Lazy Sunday was first, but Dick in a Box came shortly after.
Popular.
No. Lazy Sunday.
Well,
I mean,
I grew up under a rock.
Lazy Sunday was at least popular enough that they did a parody of it on The Office.
Great.
That's fine. I don't know. It was just them rapping about cupcakes and shit. Like, it was just
now I want a cupcake.
for the time. All right. I had one more thing to say, but it just flew out of my brain. Oh well, great.
We'll catch it for next week.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't time sensitive.
Yeah, sorry this has been so rambly again.
No, this is what it is. It's a conversation. I like it a lot.
Okay, good.
I don't like structure as much.
I know. I like a list and a plan, but,
Not for having conversation.
We're doing this to make you happy. No, I love it. I have a good time with you.
I hope so.
I do. I'm sorry, that sounded terrible.
I know you didn't mean it that way. I just, because I like just talking to you.
Yeah.
Which sucked when we were actually having the conversation about
the
Schurniverse.
I was like, oh, we should be podcasting
so good
this.
If we had the record button on, but no, that's the hard thing. And then we can't just not talk to each other for like a week.
I mean, we probably could. We're quiet people.
I couldn't.
No.
I have a lot of shit to share with you.
It's true because you don't talk to anyone else.
That's right. That's my point.
I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate you.
Great.
It's a good note to end on.
It is.
All right. I love you. This is fun.
I love you. This is fun. All right. I'm your host, Matthew, TheDoctorDanko.
I'm Hillary Krim. I'm fucked up weasel on Tumblr. I guess I can go back to saying that.
Because you've abandoned Twitter.
I go on Twitter sometimes.
That's fine.
Great. Bye.
Once the show ends, please don't shed those tears. We'll come back again, so have no fear. Oh, we told you that it just might end up this way. What's the show called again? You cannot be saying, why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me now? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn me?